Morning's scripture reading comes from the book of Luke. Today we'll be looking at Luke chapter 13, verses 10 through 17. There it says, "On a Sabbath, Jesus was teaching in one of the synagogues, and a woman was there who had been crippled by a spirit for 18 years. She was bent over and could not straighten up at all. When Jesus saw her, he called her forward and said to her, 'Woman, you are set free from your infirmity.' Then he put his hands on her, and immediately she straightened up and praised God. Indignant because Jesus had healed on the Sabbath, the synagogue leader said to the people, 'There are 6 days for work, so come and be healed on those days, not on the Sabbath.' The Lord answered them, 'You hypocrites! Doesn't each of you on the Sabbath untie your ox or your donkey from the stall and lead it out and give it water? Then should not this woman, a daughter of Abraham, whom Satan has kept bound for 18 long years, be set free on the Sabbath day from what bound her?' When he said this, all of his opponents were humiliated, but the people were delighted with all the wonderful things that he was doing." This is the word of God for the people of God. Did you ever stop to wonder what this is all about? Sunday mornings, I mean. This gathering, the worship, the singing, the reading, the preaching. Why do we do it? I sometimes wonder if we get so caught up in preparing for Sunday that we lose sight of what Sunday is really about in the first place. To many, our Christian observance of Sunday may appear pretty restrictive. Jesus spoke on many occasions about honoring the Sabbath. Honoring the Sabbath was supposed to be about honoring God. But you can't honor God from a sense of obligation. It has to come from the heart. Now, in our scripture reading, we find that according to some people, Jesus broke a major rule for keeping the Sabbath, and he healed someone who was not in imminent danger. We see in the synagogue leader's response that this was something one simply doesn't do. He rebukes this woman for coming and seeking healing. But if we read these scripture passages, there's nothing at all that indicates that this is why that she came that day. She came for the same reason that she came every single week. And that was to praise God. Now, the synagogue leader, he was an important man in the community. And he was obsessed with keeping the rules as a way to honor God. This woman, she had suffered for 18 years. And yet she continued to come each day, each week, and worship God. Now, I want to illustrate the contrast between these two people. I want you to take a look at this spoon. See how it's all bent out of shape? I hate when that happens. Now, if I would take this spoon and try to scoop some ice cream, it would be hopeless. The spoon would probably get even more bent out of shape. If I tried to eat soup with this spoon, soup would probably run down the front of my shirt. A spoon that's bent out of shape isn't much good for anything. We know that sometimes people get bent out of shape too. Old age, disease, injuries, they can cause a person's body to be bent out of shape. Perhaps you even know someone like that who can't straighten their back when they stand or they walk. Their bodies are bent out of shape like this spoon. Also, sometimes we find that people get angry at something, many times something that's not really important at all. And when that happens, we call it getting bent out of shape. You know the saying, don't get bent all out of shape? Well, our Bible lesson this morning is about these two people who were all bent out of shape. The first person in our lesson has a body that was bent. One Sabbath, as Jesus is teaching, he sees this woman. He knows she's been crippled for 18 years. What do you think he did when he saw her? He had compassion and he healed her. When he saw her, he said, "Woman, you are set free from your sickness." Then he touched her, and instantly she could stand up straight. And she began to praise and thank God for the healing. Well, then, the second person in our story, he was also bent out of shape. The Bible tells us that the leader of the synagogue became very angry because Jesus had healed this woman on the Sabbath. He reminded everyone there are 6 days for work. Come and be healed then, not on the Sabbath. Jesus answered the leader, "You're a hypocrite. You untie your donkey on the Sabbath and leave it out to get a drink. It is necessary for me to heal this woman who had been suffering for 18 years. So we find here in our passage that Sundays are really about freedom. How many of you knew that? Anybody? No. Good, you learned something today. I suspect that for many of us, Sunday has turned more into a religious obligation. It's about what we do for God. What if, however, Sunday was about what God can do for us? And recognizing that what we can do for others. What if Sunday was about remembering how God has freed us so that we might free others? What if Sunday is about calling to mind the mighty acts that God has done, that we might be encouraged to dare and do mighty acts ourselves? And what if Sunday was a day to remember that God has freed us from death itself, so we don't have to be afraid of anything, so we might share our Christian courage with others? Now, when I talk about this remembering and calling to mind God's mighty acts about freeing, I don't mean just the ones that are written in the Bible that we read about. I want us to look around us, remember, lift up those places in our community, in our congregation, in our own lives where God has been at work, so that we can name God's activity, and by naming it, we can be strengthened in our faith. Sunday, our Sabbath, it's all about freedom. The Sabbath day, whether the Jewish Sabbath on Saturday or the Christian day of rest and worship on Sunday, it reminds us, all of us, that we too have been captive. We were like this spoon. But after Jesus came into our life and we allowed him to free us, now we're more like this one. Isn't that a little bit better to use? When we're like this, the Lord can use us for the purpose we are intended for. There's no better way to honor God on a day that we set aside for worship than to follow Jesus in practicing mercy and compassion, especially toward those who are suffering and in need. There's no better way to honor God on the day of worship than by setting people free from all that binds them. I believe that when you set people free, they will honor God on the Sabbath and every day because they want to, because they cannot help but celebrate God's kindness and mercy and love because of the freedom he gives. Amen. So, brothers and sisters, as we prepare for our meal today, may the blessing of God, the fountain of living water, flow within us as a river of life. May we drink deep of his wisdom. May we never thirst again. May we go through life refreshing many as a sign of healing for all. Through the one who is life eternal. Amen. Would you please stand